Good news in the country's fight against coronavirus, as the US government has confirmed the delivery of 1.5 million doses of Johnson & Johnson vaccines. This, in addition to the 4 million varicella vaccines to be procured within 2 weeks, means that the country's inoculation drive can surely gain momentum in the days ahead. Good morning, I'm Sarah Sapsanama, and these are the top stories of the hour. Nepal's vaccination drive against COVID-19 to get another boost as US government pledges to provide 1.5 million doses of Johnson & Johnson vaccine. India and Nepal sign a letter of exchange on Indo-Nepal Rail Service Agreement. The agreement amends the 17-year-old Rail Service Agreement 2004. The Taliban's claim to have controlled most of Afghanistan after rapid gains say they have seized control of 85% of the territory. And Novak Djokovic reaches the finals of Wimbledon, defeating Denis Shapovalov in straight sets. Ashley Barty up against Pliskova in the women's finals later today. The country is all poised to receive 1.5 million doses of the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccines from the United States. The consignment is part of Biden administration's pledge to share an initial batch of 80 million US manufactured vaccines globally. The spokesperson at the US Embassy in Nepal, Anna Rish Alam, said that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which according to the manufacturers is a single-dose vaccine to combat novel coronavirus, is being sent to Nepal as a goodwill gesture amid COVID-19 crisis. Meanwhile, 800,000 doses of COVID-19 vaccines arrived in Kathmandu from China yesterday. The varicella vaccines produced by Chinese company Sinopharm arrived in Kathmandu on an aircraft of Nepal Airlines Corporation yesterday. The Health Ministry informed that 800,000 doses of varicella vaccines reached the Tribhuvan International Airport in the first phase as pre-scheduled. The government has also made preparations to bring vaccines from China on 16th and 23rd of July. The Health Ministry is making preparations to inoculate individuals under the age of 60 with the arrival of the vaccines. The government has said that an agreement was made with China to bring 4 million doses of the vaccine into the country. Meanwhile, the country continues to reel under coronavirus as 1,479 new cases were reported yesterday, taking the total infections tally to 652,859. The COVID-19 death tally has reached 9,340 as 20 more individuals succumbed to the virus yesterday. The death rate continues to stand at 1.5%. Based on the latest report by the Health Ministry, 6,657 tests through the PCR method were carried out yesterday. Kathmandu Valley has reported 318 new cases. 1,316 individuals registered full recovery in the past 24 hours, taking the total recoveries to 616,929. The recovery rate stands at 94.5%. So far, 964,508 individuals have been fully vaccinated, while over 2.61 million are awaiting second doses for COVID-19 vaccines. The Office of the President has submitted a clarification to the Supreme Court over the recent expansion of the Council of Ministers, saying that endorsing the cabinet expansion fell under the President's role as envisioned by the Constitution. The Supreme Court had demanded a clarification from the Office of the President after a writ was filed calling the President's role unconstitutional. Caretaker Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli had expanded the cabinet on 4th of June. The letter has demanded the Supreme Court scrap the writ, saying that the Constitution had ensured the President's right to endorse recommendations made by the Council of Ministers and the Prime Minister. At the same time, the Office of the President has insisted that the Apex Court scrap the writ, saying that the decisions made as per the recommendation proposed by the head of the state was above a court review. Premier Oli, who had dissolved the House of Representatives on 22nd of May, had expanded the cabinet in 2 rounds on 4th and 10th of June. The Supreme Court had issued an interim order to scrap the appointment of 20 ministers and demanded a written clarification from the Office of the President and the Prime Minister. The Office of the Prime Minister submitted its clarification, already calling the Supreme Court's interim order to stay the cabinet expansion as an interference on the executive. Now, the task force on resolving the political crisis seen in the ruling Nepal Communist Party has said that it has finalized the consensus draft. Emerging out of the marathon meeting that lasted for 7 hours yesterday at the capital's Singha Darbar, leader Pradeep Gyawali from the leadership faction informed that the task force claimed that a consensus draft has now been reached. Meanwhile, leader of the disgruntled faction Gokarna Bista has said that an understanding has been reached on most of the issues and a final deal would be made today. India and Nepal have signed a letter of exchange on Indo-Nepal Rail Service Agreement. The agreement has amended the 17-year-old Rail Service Agreement 2004.
The agreement is believed to significantly reduce the trade costs between the two neighbors. The amendment will pave way to private rail services engagement in import and export of goods. As of now, only government-owned rail service had been allowed to import goods to Nepal from Indian ports. Likewise, only Nepali Railway Service Company had been allowed to operate till Kolkata and Haldia. The two sides have agreed to extend rail services to ports at Nepalganj, Biratnagar and Bhairahawa once constructions complete. Officials believe the entry of private companies will speed up the supply hours. It takes 13 to 49 days to import goods from Indian ports at the present time. The Nepali side has demanded the supply chain be made more competitive. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi had some 6 years back highlighted the need to strengthen internal and external supply and transit mechanism by introducing private sectors, which eventually led to the tabling of the proposal. Experts opine industries near border regions will largely benefit with better rail access, citing that the availability of raw materials was the key to increasing Nepal's competitiveness. Meanwhile, businesses have emphasized on the need to allow private sector's participation in supply chain and the provision for direct payment of railway fees through commercial banks instead of current system of advance payment.
In our Public Voice segment, we've asked local residents in Baglung what they thought of the trend of constructing roads towards the end of a fiscal year. Let's take a look at what they had to say.
जब बाढी पहिरो सुरु हुन्छ यत्रो बाढी आइराखेको हुन्छ अनि विकासले गर्दै काम गर्ने बजेट सक्ने यो त नितान्त राज्यलाई घाटा हो देशलाई घाटा हो
दोर्जर लाउनेहरू बाटो पिच गर्नेहरू गर्दाखेरि हिउँदको टाइममा गर्दाखेरि धेरै राम्रो हुन्छ यो बर्खाको टाइममा विकास पैसा मात्रै सक्ने सरकारलाई घाटा मात्रै हो
विकास निर्माणको कार्य चाहिँ पछि हामीले जुन हिउँदको समय हुन्छ बाढी पहिरो पानी नपरेको समयमा त्यो समयमा गर्दा चाहिँ उपयुक्त होला जस्तो लाग्छ मलाई
Time now for our segment Public Pulse, where you text us with your opinion. The question is, what's your take on the attempt by Capital Market Monitoring Body to give broker agency license without holding exams? Your options are A. Market demand, B. Fight of right, and C. Policy level corruption. The voting is on. Type NEWS, select your option A, B or C and send it to 34001 to share your opinion with us. Time now for the sports update. Nepal has been placed in Group B of AFC Under-23 Asian Cup to be hosted by Uzbekistan in 2022. Asian Football Confederation has divided 42 teams into 11 groups under East and West Zone qualifiers. Nepal has been placed in Group B alongside Tajikistan, Lebanon and Iran. The Group B qualifiers will be held in Tajikistan coming October. Nepal will clash against Iran in the first group match. Nepal's second match will be against Tajikistan, followed by the last encounter against Lebanon. The 11 group toppers, along with 4 top second-place teams, will qualify for the main tournament next year in June. Time now for our special segment, Media Watch.
The hearing on the writs filed against the dissolution of the House of Representatives and the demand for the appointment of Nepali Congress President Sher Bahadur Deuba as the Prime Minister concluded on Monday. The hearing, which started on 23rd of June at the Constitutional Bench of the Supreme Court, ended on Monday after 4 amici curiae presented their arguments on the writ petitions. The bench has fixed the hearing date on the case for this coming Monday, and a verdict is expected to be announced on that day. The opinion on the amici curiae in the case, however, has been divided. At Monday's hearing, senior advocates Raghav Lal Vaidya and Komal Prasad Khimire stood with the petitioners, while senior advocates Usha Malla Pathak and Prakash Bahadur Kesi argued against the petitioners. Prior to the presentation of the amici curiae, Krishna Prasad Bhandari, Harihar Dahal, Badri Bahadur Karki and Shambhu Thapa presented their counter-arguments and claimed that the bench could issue a mandamus against the president. Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli, issuing his written response on the sub judice case at the Constitutional Bench of Supreme Court on Thursday, claimed that the verdict issued by the Apex Court on the writ filed against the cabinet expansion was against constitutional norms and has affected the role of the executive. Stating that the executive is responsible to run a state and settle related issues, Prime Minister Oli argued that the judiciary should not interfere on the roles of the executive. Claiming that the Constitution has entrusted the rights to the Prime Minister to decide on the cabinet structure, Premier Oli insisted that the executive head is fully authorized to expand the cabinet and divide portfolios at a time when the House of Representatives is dissolved. The joint bench of Chief Justice Cholendra Shamsher Rana and Justice Prakash Thangana had issued an interim order on 22nd of June last month on the writ filed against the expansion of the cabinet by the caretaker Prime Minister and had relieved 20 cabinet ministers from their posts. The Election Commission on Monday published a schedule for the upcoming midterm elections. The schedule comes at a time when the hearing on the writs filed at the Supreme Court against the dissolution of the House of Representatives is at its final stage. Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli had dissolved the lower house on 22nd of May and had announced 2 phases of midterm elections to be held on 12th and 19th of November later this year. Political parties are required to register their respective parties at the Election Commission from 15th to 30th of July. The Election Commission has fixed 5th to 6th of September to file for candidacy for the first phase of the election and 16th and 17th of the same month for the second phase. The vote counting is scheduled to begin from 19th of November.
That's all for the moment. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.